Welcome to Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine. I'm your host, Jill Jardine, Master's in Counseling Psychology, longtime astrologer, psychic healer, and yogi. In this episode, I'm going to discuss major planetary retrogrades occurring during the second part of 2022 and what that means for us all. Very important to be aware that there are 4 to 5 planets going retrograde in August 2022 and 5 to 6 planets retrograde during September. Plan accordingly. Welcome to the episode on major planetary retrogrades during July through December 2022 and what it means for us all. Listen up because you will be personally effective if a major planet is retrograding through your sign. Planets traveling retrograde, or what looks like reverse motion astronomically, is a common phenomenon in astrology. Astrologically, a retrograde is when a planet travels backward through a zodiacal sign. Since retrograde motion is so radically different than the norm, it's not a surprise that many people often experience it as disruptive. Retrograde planets change our perception, direction, attitude, and trajectory. When a planet passes the Earth in its orbit, or vice versa, it is said to be going retrograde. From our vantage point on Earth, it is almost as if the planet is moving in reverse. This is an illusion, but it's a bit like two trains passing at different speeds. One appears to be going backwards. When planets travel retrograde astrologically, it's a good time to practice the re words related to the archetypal energies of a specific planet. For example, when Venus is retrograde, it is a good time to look at your relationship life and past patterns that are not healthy around relationships. Some exes may show up or try to contact us. Reviewing past relationships and realizing what are patterns in partnership, such as codependence, etc., which are not healthy, so we don't continue those patterns in future connections. So during planetary retrogrades, we implement all those RE words, such as review, revisit, reassess, reestablish, reunite, reconnect, research, and re-alize. Retrogrades may not be the best times to begin something new, but they can be good for tying up loose ends or giving a waylaid project a second chance to succeed. Retrogrades are periods of reassessment and redoing. They frequently deal with the past, so things, situations, and even people from the past can reappear. It is time to slow down, do some personal reflection, and review the trajectory we've been on. By making an effort to check ourselves and learn from our past and past mistakes during a retrograde, we can move forward with more clarity and confidence once it's done. During retrogrades, issues that we've tried to bury or ignore could come back to the surface to haunt us, forcing us to deal with them and find some resolution. Even situations that we thought were finished could bubble up again in some way, requiring us to come up to new conclusions or learn new lessons. You may notice that during certain retrogrades, you have a tendency to hit roadblocks or projects don't get started. You can run into issues within relationships or face personal crisis or confusion. Think of these struggles as the universe's way of helping you learn from mistakes and get in touch with yourself before charging forward on new endeavors. Retrogrades are connected with karmic events in life. So rolling with retrograde flow instead of trying to overcome it can help you feel more in sync. So what does each retrograde planet mean for us? Well, you have to look at the archetype of what that planet signifies to understand what that will mean. When planets go retrograde, entire populations will experience the RE aspect of the planet, meaning revisiting a situation personally or collectively. Each of the planets in astrology rules over a different part of our lives. It's within those parts of our life that will experience the retrograde fueled effects while a planet is going backwards. Every planet's retrograde has something different to teach us, and they offer us opportunities to pause so we can review our decisions, assess where we're at, and make adjustments before moving forward again. When I come back, I'll explain what it means with each planet retrograde. So let's start with the retrograde everybody knows about now. It is in popular culture, and that is Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrogrades 24 days at a time, 3 to 4 times a year. I know it sometimes feels like more. Mercury's retrograde again. Mercury is the planet of communication, thinking, timing, and technology. Its retrogrades can cause all sorts of mix-ups, scheduling snags, problems with technology, and delays and frustrations. Mercury retrogrades 3 to 4 times a year for about 3 weeks at a time. If you are a Virgo or a Gemini, or Mercury is going retrograde through your sun sign, you will be affected more than most signs by a Mercury retrograde. Virgo and Gemini are impacted by Mercury retrograde cycles because they are the signs that Mercury rules. Later in the podcast, I'm going to give you the remaining Mercury retrograde cycle for 2022 and all the retrograde cycles that are coming in 2022 for the second half of the year. Venus retrograde. When Venus is retrograde, it's going to impact our relationships or finances. Venus is the planet of love, romance, value, and money. So we have to look out for those areas of our life when it retrogrades. Venus retrogrades for 42 days every 2 years. When Venus goes retrograde, the sun sign that it is traveling retrograde through will be affected, as well as Librans and Taurians, because Venus rules Libra and Taurus. Mars retrograde. Mars is the planet of energy, passion, and sexuality. So its retrogrades affect the way we take action on things and chase our goals. Women, get ready for those men from your past to show up when Mars is retro. Mars backspins every 2 years for about 80 days at a time. Those born under the sun sign that Mars is retrograding through will be affected, as will Aries and Scorpio, signs that Mars has the modern and traditional rulership over. In Vedic and classical astrology, Mars rules Scorpio and Aries still. Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter is the planet of growth and expansion, so its retrogrades relate to our personal evolution. Jupiter retrograde can limit our reach and scope, and may also pop the balloon of something that was expanding too fast and too big. Jupiter backspins once a year for 120 days at a time. The signs that Jupiter retrogrades through, as well as Sagittarians, are impacted by Jupiter retrograde cycles. Jupiter rules the sign of Sagittarius. Saturn retrograde. Saturn is the planet of rules and restrictions. So when it retrogrades, it affects our sense of obligation and responsibility. When Saturn retrogrades, societal dictates and rules can be reversed. When rules or edicts are enforced during a Saturn retrograde cycle, sometimes they don't stick. I like to say when Saturn is retrograde, what is done can be undone. Saturn backspins once a year for 140 days. The sign that Saturn's retrograding through, as well as Capricorn, are affected by its retrograde cycles. Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn. Uranus retrograde. Uranus is the planet of change, chaos, and unexpected shifts. So its retrogrades subtly affect the way we process sudden change in our lives. It is a transpersonal or collective planet, meaning when it retrogrades, Groups of people might be affected by a significant event that occurs during the retrograde cycle. Uranus retrogrades once a year for about 5 months at a time. Those with the sun sign that Uranus is transiting through, as well as Aquarians, will be impacted by Uranus retrograde cycle. Uranus rules the sign Aquarius. Neptune retrograde. Neptune is the planet of dreams and illusions. So its retrogrades subtly affect the way we perceive our realities. Neptune is a transpersonal planet that can affect groups of people when it retrogrades, sometimes waking populations out of a collective illusion being perpetuated by the media or government. Neptune backspins once a year for about 5 months at a time. When Neptune retrogrades, the sign Neptune is transiting through, and Pisces, the sign that Neptune rules, will be affected. In the current case of 2022, with Neptune retrograde, it is already transiting through its own sign of Pisces. So Pisces are getting a double whammy as they are feeling this Neptune retrograde strongly. Pluto retrograde. Pluto is the planet of transformation, so its retrogrades subtly affect our relationship to slow-moving changes taking place in society. Pluto retrograde allows time for population to integrate big shifts in situations and consciousness. Sometimes groups of people will wake up to power plays that the government, military, media, or other groups who hold power have implemented in a population. Pluto backspins once a year for about 5 months at a time. When Pluto retrogrades, those born during the sign it is retrograding through, and Scorpios, will be impacted as Pluto rules the sign Scorpio. When we come back, I'll discuss the current planetary retrograde cycles we are experiencing from July through December 2022. Welcome back to the part of the episode when I talk about the retrograde planets for the second half of 2022. We're going to start with Pluto. Pluto has been retrograding since April 29th, 2022, and backspins until October 8th, 2022 in the sign Capricorn. It goes direct on October 8th at 5:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Capricorns and Scorpios are impacted during Pluto retrograde, and specifically around the time it will go direct on October 8th, 2022. The day that a planet transits direct tends to bring a whirlwind of energy forward with it. We can expect some big news to break around October 8th, and the financial markets will be affected in some way. Pluto is the lord of death, rebirth, and transformation. So during this retrograde cycle, basically May through early October 2022, we can see society experiencing change and metamorphosis. Pluto is like the Vedic archetype Shiva, the destroyer, breaking things down, releasing all that no longer serves, and stirring up the cauldron of transmutation and transformation. Pluto retrograde brings up the dark underbelly of death, violence, abuse, control agendas, and all the wrongdoings in society. In an individual's chart, when transiting Pluto retrogrades and aspects a natal planet, it can bring unexpected and deep health issues. Personally, Pluto will affect people's subconscious and can bring up shadow content from one's psyche and from the collective unconscious. There can be an uptick in violence when Pluto retrogrades, triggering other planetary aspects, or when it is getting ready to station direct. When Pluto went retrograde on April 29th, 2022, it was the day before the solar eclipse of April 30th, 2022. In the first 2 months of Pluto's retrograde cycle, during this eclipse pattern, there was even more violence in the United States with the Uvalde, Texas school shooting in May and the July 4th shooting in Chicago. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn will bring revisions in laws and governmental edicts. Sometimes when new laws are passed during Pluto retrograde, they won't stick, especially if Saturn and Jupiter are retrograde at the same time, which will be the case from June through October 2022. Saturn retrograde. Saturn retrogrades in Aquarius from June 4th through October 23rd, 2022. Saturn stations direct on October 23rd, 2022 at 12:07 a.m. Aquarians and Capricorns will feel this transit stronger than most and also need to be alert around the time Saturn stations direct on October 23rd. Saturn naturally rules boundaries, limits, responsibilities, discipline, and authority. Saturn is considered the karmic lord in astrology, so sometimes we can see karma come home to roost during its retrograde cycle. Whoever thinks they have the last laugh may be duped during Saturn retrograde. Also, as I mentioned with Pluto retrograde, what is done during Saturn retrograde can be undone. And this includes laws and other mandates the courts or governments are trying to impose upon a population during a Saturn retrograde cycle. Also, for individuals, health issues that one might have thought went away can reappear under Saturn retrograde. In one's personal life, Saturn retrograde can help one go back and review plans, revisit structures they want to implement in their lives, and maybe redo plans that can be launched after Saturn goes direct. During any Saturn retrograde transit, we may have a momentary reprieve from the typical effects of Saturn, which normally would include a sense of pressure, burden, obligation, responsibility, fear, or frustration. So during Saturn retrograde, you get a break from those feelings. Similar to all retrograde transits, Saturn retrograde periods are excellent for reviewing what we have learned thus far. It will give us a chance to view how we can continue to improve our situation. Saturn retrograde periods are also ideal for revisiting form or structures and understanding how something may be best built to stand the test of time. So, in other words, we want to dismantle any temporary structures or temporary situations and look at how we can get them to sustain us going forward into the future when Saturn is retrograde, and then implement them when Saturn goes direct. The planet Neptune. Neptune has been retrograding in Pisces from June 28th through December 3rd, 2022. That's almost half the year. Neptune is a very slow-moving planet, so the retrograde cycles last a little longer. Pisceans are impacted by this Neptune retrograde cycle, and especially when it transits direct on December 3rd, 2022. When Neptune travels retrograde, it helps us to integrate our dreams and visions. We may find out where we have deluded ourselves. Where in life are we wearing those rose-colored glasses of illusion, and where have we been led down the garden path? Neptune retrograde is a good time for deep spiritual practices and connecting with Source. Meditation and spiritual retreats are enhanced. Getting away from the mundane and focusing on creative pursuits are favored. So Neptune retrograde, June 28th through December 3rd, 2022. Jupiter retrogrades from July 28th through November 23rd. Jupiter will be retrograde in the sign Aries from July 28th through October 29th, and then backtracks to be retrograde in Pisces from October 29th to November 23rd. Sagittarians, Aries, and Pisces are all impacted by this retrograde cycle because Sagittarius is the sign that Jupiter rules. Jupiter is a great benefic in astrology, bringing blessings, knowledge, abundance, good luck, and wisdom. Jupiter signifies the inner guru or teacher. Jupiter expands consciousness, bringing new experiences and allowing us to journey inwardly or outwardly to new areas of life or far horizons. When Jupiter travels retrograde, we see shifts in religions and governments. So under Jupiter retrograde, we can see revisions made in government policies and reversals and abuses of those in power and religious leaders or cults. There can be revelations of abuses by church leaders or government leaders when Jupiter is retrograde. Uranus retrograde in Taurus from August 24th, 2022 through January 22nd, 2023. This retrograde cycle affects Taurians and Aquarians. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is the great awakener, and when he goes retrograde, this is a time of integration. Usually, there are recent revelations or shifts in consciousness right before Uranus transits retrograde. Uranus will bring breakthroughs and breakdowns. Uranus urges change and doesn't want us to rest on our laurels. During Uranus retrograde, we can figure out how to implement changes in our lives and society. There will be powerful wake-up calls, and necessary change is inevitable. Also, for individuals who have strong Uranian signatures in their natal charts, unexpected health issues can pop up suddenly. Mercury is retrograde for the third time in 2022 from September 9th through October 2nd. So basically most of September 2022. And then Mercury will be retrograde for the fourth time from December 29th, 2022 through January 18th, 2023 in the sign Capricorn. Mercury will be retrograde in Libra from September 9th through September 23rd. Then we'll go back and retrograde in Virgo from September 23rd through October 2nd. Libras will be affected, as will Gemini, and especially Virgo, the sign that Mercury rules. Virgo will get a double whammy because Mercury is their ruling planet and is going retrograde through their sign. As the planet of communication, Mercury retrograde tends to breed a certain level of confusion. Mercury rules our lower mind, how we perceive and interpret information that we receive from our environment, and how we relay that information to others. Mercury has rulership over such things as speaking, negotiating, buying and selling, formal contracts, documents, travel, mail, shipping, electronics, technology. All of these areas of life are affected when Mercury is retrograde. Decision-making is challenged when Mercury is retrograde. Astrology 101 advises don't sign contracts or engage in important decision-making or launch a new business. Delays and challenges are more likely with Mercury retrograde, and people can sometimes be careless with money or personal information. So be vigilant with Mercury retrograde. The good part of Mercury retrograde, that it is an RE time. You can reorganize, replan, revisit, rework, review. Very good to go back and learn things over again or refresh your knowledge or research. So when Mercury goes retrograde in Libra during September 2022, there could be communication snafus in partnerships and relationships, or people can be very indecisive about making decisions or other forward movements. Don't over rationalize, and maybe wait until Mercury is direct before one makes big decisions, because Libra likes to seesaw, going back and forth over the pros and cons. And retrograde Mercury in Libra is going to be really slow to make a decision. So wait till it is past, and don't make any big decisions around relationships, such as ending them or getting a divorce or cutting people out of your life while Mercury is retrograde in Libra, because you'll probably regret it once it goes direct. Retrograde Mercury aligns with the Sun in Libra on the 23rd of September, bringing illumination to our thoughts. It is a good time for processing what has gone down, and it may bring a new perspective or new understanding on something. When Mercury is retrograde in Virgo from the 23rd of September through the 2nd of October, people may find themselves being over analytical or too critical. They may also be having remorse for decisions that they had made prior. Don't rack your brain or self criticize during Mercury retrograde in Virgo. It can be too picky and too critical. What a Mercury retrograde in Virgo can help is to review recent work. Don't get caught up in perfectionism. Reevaluate plans, routines, habits. It's really good time to review your health regimes and perhaps think about what has worked in the past for your health, supplements, exercise, any other interventions, and maybe plan to reactivate that when Mercury goes direct in Virgo on October 2nd. And then that final Mercury retrograde cycle that happens from December 29th, 2022 to January 18th, 2023 in Capricorn is a really good time at the end of 2022 to re-envision your plans for your business life, practical life, and really getting ready to hit the ground running after January 18th, 2023 with a whole fresh perspective on your business and financial life. And the last retrograde I'm going to talk about for 2022 is the planet Mars. Mars retrogrades from October 30th, 2022 through January 12th, 2023 in the sign Gemini. So Geminis and Aries will be impacted. Aries is the sign that Mars rules. When Mars goes retrograde, it slows things down. Wars and violence may be calmed down. Mars rules surgery and sharp instruments. So it's not the best time to schedule surgeries when Mars is retrograde. We may find our motivation and drive to succeed diminishes. Focus and assertive behaviors are less intense. When Mars is retrograde, it's a good time to look at conflict in your life and see where you need to redirect energy. Mars retrograde can also bring up health issues as Mars rules vitality and life force. When Mars is in its retrograde cycle, we must reassess our current projects, our approach to getting what we want, and our desires. Rather than directly assert our desires, go within and see what those desires represent for you. When Mars is traveling direct, we tend to be more straightforward, assertive, and aggressive. But while it's retrograde, Mars is essentially turned inward. It's internalized, intensified, personalized, and perhaps pressurized. So people tend to process things quite deeply when Mars is retrograde, but they don't necessarily take action. People can be hesitant about taking action, second guessing instincts or natural impulses rather than acting upon them. And the other thing that can happen when Mars is retrograde, people can internalize anger. And this can turn into depression, resentment, apathy, and some inner tensions. So Mars can be very emotionally disruptive when it goes retrograde because things are turned inward. And also people can feel repressed in many ways, sexually and otherwise. Anger can have weird manifestations for people as they may feel they can't express it. So they could get health issues. Things like rashes and hives can show up, and other inflammatory manifestations can happen when Mars goes retrograde, because that powerful life force energy is not being expressed. So take note of all these retrograde cycles of the planets and plan your life accordingly, especially if the planet is going retrograde in your sun sign. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Cosmic Scene on retrograde planets during the second half of 2022. Remember to subscribe, share, download, and give us a 5-star review. This is Cosmic Scene with Jill Jardine, sending healing cosmic currents through the quantum field.